The Benjamin Dixon Show is only possible with listener support. Go to www.thebenjamindixonshow.com to register for our blog and join the Progressive Army. And now, ladies and gentlemen,
we are now about to witness the truth.
It's the Benjamin Dixon Show.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Benjamin Dixon Show. I am, of course, your host, Benjamin Dixon. It is today, Thursday, June 30th, 2016. Thank you so much for joining us. A big weekend coming up, long weekend, 4-day weekend. I'm looking, 4-day for me. I don't know about you, but it's a 4-day for me. So I'm working on, I think I counted up about 13 to 15 hours of sleep. But Earl Grey, hot, does wonders. So we're excited about tonight's show. Tonight I'm going to be joined by April Rain. She is the creator of the hashtag #OscarsSoWhite. So we'll be discussing the changes to the Academy that have taken place this week. She'll be joining me at 9:15. Then we'll also be talking with April about the speech by Jesse Williams. I haven't spoken about it yet. It was a great speech. I enjoyed every bit of it, but I wanted to wait till I got April on the show to talk about it. Also, I'll be joined by Professor Matt Sienkiewicz. He is a university professor at the Boston College, and he's going to be joining me again. We're going to talk a little bit more about the Middle East in light of all the happenings this week and the conversations we've been having with Rania Khalek online. We've had conversations with Bakari Sellers about his letter that it was signed by almost 60 black representatives, or politicians rather, who agree with his assessment of standing in favor of the 2012 language on Israel and Palestine and standing against the language proposed by Bernie Sanders and represented on the platform committee by Cornel West. So Matt and I, Professor Sienkiewicz and I, are going to discuss that a little bit more. I want to talk about an article that I missed last night, but at the top of the show, I want to thank all of my patrons, the newest patrons to the family. Welcome to the Progressive Army. Robert C., thank you for your pledge. Nyasha, I believe that should be Dr. Nyasha. Thank you so much for your pledge. And Aaron D., thank you so much for your pledge. We absolutely cannot do this without you. And again, for those of you who can't pledge, or you're just not in a position to support on a regular basis financially, go over to iTunes.com and look for the Benjamin Dixon Show and give us a review. Tell us what you think. And at a minimum, subscribe. Subscribe to the channels, all the different channels, the podcast, YouTube, Spreaker. You know what to do. You know where to do it. We can't do it without you. All right. In other news, in news, so I actually got the exclusive for the letter that Bakari Sellers wrote. I didn't mention it yesterday. I guess I was just a little tired yesterday, but some 50,000 people have seen it, and it is a interesting letter. And just got word on Twitter that in addition to Rania Khalek debating or discussing this issue with Bakari Sellers, it looks like Professor Mark Lamont Hill wants to join in on the conversation. He's a little confused by the letter, or at least he has some questions by the letter. So if you want to read the letter, go over to progressivearmy.com progressivearmy.com and take a look at the article and the letter from Bakari Sellers on the Democratic National Committee platform. So definitely check that out. We had the exclusive. Nobody had the letter before the Progressive Army. And so good on the Progressive Army, and good on all of you who helped make this happen. All right, a couple of breaking news, or not so much breaking, but just happening today that I want to briefly discuss. And it's actually really good news on the front of LGBTQ rights. So the Pentagon today said on Thursday that it was ending the ban on transgender people being able to serve openly in the military. I wish I had an applause track. I promise you I will have my applause track back next week. But this is great news. So finally, the LGBTQ community, particularly the transgender community, will be able to serve openly in the military. And you know, what can you say about this, right? If you're willing to serve in our military and you're willing to put your life on the line, the bare minimum, the very bare minimum that America should be able to do for you is to allow you to be who you are at a bare minimum. So according to CNN, the Pentagon said that it will be ending its transgender ban, allowing transgender people to be able to serve openly in the U.S. military. The announcement, which removes one of the last barriers to military service by any individual, was made by Secretary of Defense Ash Carter, Defense Secretary Ash Carter, who had been studying the issue for almost a year. The decision comes as the military has witnessed major changes in the role of women and the inclusion of gays, lesbians, bisexual, and service members bisexual service members in recent years. So again, this is a culmination. I think it's something to celebrate, because if someone is going to put their life on the line for this country, the very bare minimum we can do, like I already said, but I'm going to say it again, is to allow them to openly be who they are. And all of this unfounded fear that somehow this was going to harm the efficacy of our armed forces, they studied it long enough to determine that it won't. All right. Progress, progress. Slowly but surely, America's making progress. In other news, so here in Boston, where you would think it is a blue state, and it is a blue state. It's so blue, in fact, that I may not even have to vote for Hillary Clinton to stop Donald Trump. I very well may be able to vote for Jill Stein. If that's how I choose, I go into the voting booth. I may be able to help her out because it's such a blue state. Overall, it is a very, very liberal state. It's not a swing state. Massachusetts will never go to Donald Trump. That's how progressive the state is. However, there is very little, if any, progressive radio on terrestrial radio here in Boston. None whatsoever. And the loudest voice in our fair city is a conservative by the name of, if I hadn't tried to think of it, then I would have been able to thought of it. What is this guy's name? Howie Carr. I knew this guy's name. Howie Carr, the biggest mouth in Boston. I could hurl insults at him about his show, how lackluster the show is. The show, like most, Talking with Tom Hartman, understanding now that most conservative media is subsidized because most of the shows aren't really doing good, but you have like the Heritage Foundation and other foundations who would spend $20,000, $15,000 just to subsidize this propaganda. Howie Carr is the biggest mouth in Boston. Nothing really to say, just a big mouth. And so on yesterday, Howie Carr, opening up for Donald Trump here in Massachusetts, here in Boston, I'm assuming. Yeah, I would guess that it was here in Boston. If not, I'd be surprised. Howie Carr decided to up the ante on Donald Trump's racial and derogatory slur on Elizabeth Warren, calling her Pocahontas. Howie Carr thought that he would take and get 10 minutes of fame in the limelight because nobody nationwide really gives a damn about who you are, Howie. Nobody. I've been doing this for a year and a half, and I'd venture to say probably more people know me on a national level than your little show. You're big in Boston. Anyway, let me stop. Because I'm sure more people know him nationwide. I'm sure it is. But still, it's a shitty show. So anyway, this lackluster bastard decided to do an Indian war cry, the most stereotypical racist interpretation of Indian culture. I don't really care that he was offending Elizabeth Warren because I'm not a fan of Elizabeth Warren, nor am I concerned with people hurting other people's feelings. That's life. That's how it goes. I'm really just surprised that we would allow somebody who is so empty and has absolutely nothing to contribute to the national conversation, let alone the local conversation here in Boston, actually have a platform. But that goes to show you that someone like Howie Carr, who will get on stage on national TV and do anything to get a little bit of attention for 15 minutes of fame to help boost his ratings, I'm surprised that we allow him to even have a platform here in Boston. But, you know, AM radio, like a friend said, AM radio here is AM radio anywhere, no matter where it is. And you get all of these local jokers who are on their last ditch effort to have a few minutes in the light, do anything they possibly can. You guys, I'm sorry. I'm just being a dick here. But it was offensive. Here's the thing about being offensive. Being offensive is actually a stripe of honor. Yes. Did I say Indian? I really meant Native American. Thank you. Thank you, my producer, calling me out on that. Thank you. Native American. America's first people. He's offensive to them. Obviously, you know, but here's the thing, right? I'm not going to talk about it in terms of the offense, because that's exactly what people like Howie Carr and Donald Trump want. They want, this is a badge of honor for him to be called a racist by liberals and progressives. To them, this is a badge of honor. This is like they've ascended to the heights of the highest heights that they can go because they have offended some people. I'm not offended by it. It just shows me that there's really nothing redeeming about this bunch, particularly the propagandists, the people who get paid to be on TV, the people who get paid to be the surrogates. They are literally out there just to see if they can offend you. And if they can offend you, then their crowd loves them. That is what they want. That is what they go after. And I think the best way to get to people like this is to not let them get to you. And understand that it's really just a desperate cry for attention, not for help, because they get paid plenty good money to be bigot, you know, racist sons of bitches, right? They get paid plenty of money to do that, right? So they don't need help. They just need to be boosted. They need their platforms to be bigger. And the more offensive they can be, the bigger, you know, their platforms can. It reminds me of, I can't think of Tomi Lahren, whatever her name is. I was watching her quote unquote debate with Charlamagne tha God, and they were discussing Jay-Z and Beyonce's video, or Beyonce's Super Bowl appearance. And she was, you know, just saying everything she possibly could to try to make Charlamagne tha God upset. But ultimately, she was trying to score points with her audience. And it dawned on me that she said it. She was like, well, you know, I wouldn't have got out there and Beyonce is out there supporting terrorist organizations. You know, the Black Panthers were terrorists and Malcolm X was a terrorist, right? Saying everything they possibly could to get understand. And then she compared it and said, I would never support white supremacists. I would never support white terrorist organizations. And the truth is, of course, she, nor Donald Trump, nor Howie Carr, none of them will openly support white supremacists. But all of the white supremacists and all of the neo-Nazis and all of the fascists support their bullshit. So you may not be number one, or white supremacy may not be number one for your life and for your platform, Howie. And for your platform, Lauren, whatever your name is, what's her name? You may not be number one, but all of the white supremacists come to you. And for you, they are number one. I said that's so wrong. Oh, and clip that. Let me say it again, because I can say it way better. White supremacy may not be number one for you, but you are number one for white supremacy. Yes, cut the other one out. 857-600-0518 is the number to call if you want to join the conversation. So I will talk about the article from the IMF, the new neoliberalism. I got a chance to talk tonight with Tom Hartman on the Big Picture on RT TV. Great conversation about the data that came out from Reuters Ipsos poll showing that Donald Trump, big surprise, his supporters were the most racist. And the surprising data in that was that Hillary Clinton's supporters were right in parity, right in the margin of error with Ted Cruz. John Kasich's supporters, and not too far from Ted Cruz's supporters. And so we had a chance to talk about that and really unpack some of the things that we can do to move forward. And including that conversation at the very tail end, we started talking about this letter from the International Monetary Fund that that really outlined the failings of neoliberalism. And I want to talk about that a little bit before the show is over. I wanted to talk about it last night, but last night got a little busy with all the calls, so I'll be sure to cover that. Yeah, I'm sorry. My producers are yelling at me. I didn't tell you guys I was on RT because it just happened. It was really a last minute thing. I'll get the clip and share it on Twitter and on YouTube or wherever. But so before today's show, I was on with Tom Hartman on Russia Today. All right. I am joined by, it's been a long time. She hasn't been on my show in a while. I am joined by the always fabulous.
Can you see me?
I can see you. Yes, I can. And I can hear you. I can hear you great.
Wait, I can't see you. Hold on.
Yeah, you won't be able to see me. I should have told you that earlier. So the audience can see you. I can see you. And we can hear you. How are you, April Rain? How are you?
I am well, thank you. Thanks for having me back again.
My pleasure. It has been a long time. Where have you been?
Oh,
That's a big question, right?
busy.
You've been busy.
Yeah, I've been several different places, but always happy to be back on the Benjamin Dixon Show.
Yeah, and I never told my audience, and I never really said it on Twitter, but the craziest thing happened. I was in New York for the Left Forum, and I honestly, I didn't tell you this, but I had gotten on the wrong subway, right? I got turned around and got on the wrong subway, and I jumped on the right subway at the last second, and lo and behold, I saw somebody that looked familiar. And I said, wait a minute, that's April Rain. So I shouted out the subway, and me and April Rain, you're not from New York, and I'm not from New York, but we ended up being in New York on the same day, same time, same subway, and we got a chance to talk, and that was great. So I just wanted to share that was really fun running into you and catching up and like old times. Now, I know you've been gone and you've been busy.
Absolutely. Old times like for the first time.
Old times like the first time, right? Yeah, we definitely establish that baseline. One of the reasons I haven't been able to catch up with you in a long time is because you've been on a whirlwind tour, basically discussing Oscars So White, and you've done a phenomenal job with it as the creator, and you've been really forwarding the message of bringing a level of diversity to the Academy and to the award. Just you brought light to a lot of things. And this week, there was some amazing news that came out that I felt I should bring you on. Tell us about what happened this week and some of the implications. What does it actually mean that the Academy is diversifying? Bringing diversity.
It's good. Yes, it's good news. It's a good first step. So the Academy has announced that they are bringing in 680, well, they have sent out invitations, I'll say, to 683 new members, both artists and film executives, and just people in love with films, because there are some at-large positions as well. This is more than double the previous class, which was the class last year for 2015, was their largest ever. And then they've I think it's around 322. And now they've doubled that with 683. So what that means is of the new class, 41% of the new class is women. So over 300 new women are coming into the Academy, assuming they accept, and why would you not? And almost 300 are people of color.
Wow.
So it's good news. I think it is more than what was expected, but of course, April is never happy. And so a lot more still needs to be done.
April's never happy, but you know what? There still is work that needs to be done, right? So we can't, I was talking to Michelangelo Signorelli about a year ago, and he was talking about, sometimes when we get these victories, we get victory blindness, and we think that we've made it, when in actuality, there's still a lot of work to be done. So this is a big win, right? No one can minimize the impact that this would have, but what are some of the other things? What are some of the other work that needs to be done to move diversity forward?
Sure. Well, it is a win. I'm not sure that I would categorize it as a big win,
Hmm.
because when you drill down in the numbers, what you realize is that the percentage of people of color, with these hundreds of new people that are coming in, only increases from 8% to 11%. So that still means that the academy is going to be 89% white.
Hmm.
Similarly, the numbers for women are increasing from 25% to 27%, so just a 2% increase. And so that means that the academy is still going to be 73% male.
Mm.
And the youngest person to be extended an invitation is 24, and
Wow.
the oldest is 91. And the average age of Academy members before this was around 66. So they haven't released those numbers, but I'm assuming that means that the average age is still going to be in the high 50s or low 60s. So we're still talking about an Academy that is 89% male,
Mm.
73% white, and in their second half of life, let's say with respect to age.
Mm.
And so that's the concern, because even though they're bringing in nearly 700 new people, it still means that the demographics overall of the academy were so slanted to
Hmm.
begin with, that this is an incremental change, but a change nonetheless.
So let's unpack it a little further, right? Particularly in the conversation of representation. So I am, for lack of a better word, I'm a socialist. I think in terms of class all the time. All the time. I put class first. You know, even though I'm black, I put class first, and race is tied, right? It's like neck and neck tied, and depending on the situation. So a lot of times I don't pay attention to representation and diversity. I kind of put that secondary, particularly with Hollywood. I mean, they're all rich. Why should I even care that there's diversity in the academy? Why should I even care that there's diversity in Hollywood when they're just a bunch of rich people and they're not worried about the plight of poor people? I threw a big one at you.
I'm glad you asked. I'm glad you asked, Ben. Yes, I appreciate that softball. You should care because what I believe is that the Academy can only nominate films, quality films that are made. So the
Hmm.
onus is still on Hollywood to increase its ranks.
Hmm.
But what the Academy has done with not just bringing in, with this new class of membership, is it's not just about the actors and actresses. This extends to over a dozen different categories. So that means more casting directors of color and
Hmm.
more female casting directors, more cinematographers, producers, executives, the people that are in the room that are making the decisions about which films are going to be greenlit, now look more diverse than they did a year ago. So that's the important part. And, they all have more money than you and I do, but not
Combined
all of
times
them are
10.
multi. Exactly. But they don't. They're not all mega millionaires. We're
Hmm.
talking of some of them are documentary filmmakers. And historically, those are people in short film and short animated filmmakers.
Hmm.
And historically, those are people who do not necessarily have the deep pockets, but still have the talent, and then just need the opportunity, which hopefully this becoming a member of the academy will grant them.
Um, I was my son came well, my son went somewhere with my wife the other week, and she told me what happened there. He went to a party, and at the party there was a doctor, and it was a black doctor, and he came home and said, "Daddy, I met a black doctor." I was like, "Really?" And I looked at my wife, and I was kind of curious. I'm like, "What made him, say it like that?" And he said, "I had never seen a black doctor before." I mean, we're in Boston, so that makes sense, right? Yeah, we
That's
barely
not rare.
if
Yeah.
if it's winter, we don't see black people at all. That's just how Boston is. And then at that point, it really dawned on me that something that I've heard you say millions of times. I've heard other people say that representation matters. We need to see ourselves in key positions, especially at an early age. Would you talk about it from that perspective, and the impact of what Oscar So White will have on just having a representation and having young people and old people to be able to see themselves in some important roles?
Right. Well, that's what I've been fighting for. I have children too, and so I want them to be able to see themselves and their stories up on the big screen or on the stage or even, in our home on our TV screen.
Hmm.
And that's really the whole point of Oscar So White, sort of bringing in marginalized communities that have been traditionally underrepresented in the entertainment industry and giving them the opportunity to tell their stories. So again, you go back to casting directors. Everybody works from their own frame of reference, and
Hmm.
that's not a bigotry or discriminatory or racist thing. You just bring your own baggage
Right.
into the room. Everybody does that, and so having a casting director of color may mean that they have a different mindset with respect to how a particular role should look
Hmm.
for a character, and so maybe they've got something different in their mind when people come into the room. So it's important then, therefore, for young actors and actresses and older actors and actresses, because there's also an age thing there, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
That they
Yeah.
should get the opportunity too. Same thing for directors, because and producers, all of these categories have increased their diversity ranks, and it's so very important that when people are sitting around, these big boardrooms, as I've imagined it in my mind,
Hmm.
and talked about, not only who is going to be in front of the camera, but who is going to tell the story behind the camera. The cinematographers and directors, that we're using a broader stroke
Yeah.
than our own personal frame of reference, and saying, why can't Don Cheadle play Matt Damon's role in the first Martian, or Daniel Day Kim? Why can't we have Shala Lynch, who's a fantastic documentary a filmmaker? Why can't she helm a $20 million budget to do something important on Black women in film? So those are the questions that I want to see asked. Why can't this person
Hmm.
do this role? Because there's so many that can be considered um, neutral, I
Yeah.
guess. It doesn't necessarily have to be a person of a specific gender or hue or what have you.
Yeah, let's shift gears. And speaking of Hollywood, right? Let's shift gears. I haven't talked about the speech by Jesse Williams at the BET Awards. That really, I mean, that was a, I mean, to say it was a great speech is an understatement. I mean, it really was something, and it pissed a lot of white people off, right? So we'll talk about that in the second half.
Pissed off some Black people too.
Yeah, it's surprise. It does. It's amazing how that works, right? What? Tell me about the speech. I mean, I was following your timeline, so I know everything that you thought about the speech. I know everything. I know. I won't even say some of the things that you said about the speech. But tell me what you thought about the speech, and what were some of your favorite moments out of that speech?
Oh man. I really think that it was a seminal moment in television, and I don't think that's really overstating it too much.
Right.
Not only because of what he said, but also because of how he said it
Yeah,
and
man.
where he said it. Because let's remember, it wasn't just broadcast on BET; it was also broadcast on Nickelodeon,
Right.
and several other stations. And so those who may not normally have been interested in the BET Awards may have gotten, a very hard dose of reality
Yeah.
from Jesse Williams' speech. He started the speech after thanking his parents and his beautiful wife by saying that, the award is for Black women, and
Mm-hmm.
that, we as Black men can and will do better
Mm-hmm.
by Black women. And I think that set the tone, and it was absolutely beautiful. And he called everybody out. He called out white folks who like to think sometimes of themselves as allies, and especially those who don't consider themselves as allies. He called out Black folks who are operating from a position of class and
Mm-hmm.
economic privilege, and saying, do not rest on your laurels. Again, he called out Black men. So, no one was immune that night. Um, one of the other just fantastic things, and if you know about Jesse Williams, you know that he's been woke, as we say, for a long, long time. But the fact that he used his platform to speak so eloquently and passionately
Yeah.
about Black people.
Yeah.
Yeah, when he didn't have to, and when it may mean, less roles for him, that, that it's going, and he has even spoken of the fact that as a man with a Black father and a white mother, he operates from a position of privilege as well, not just with respect to his finances, but also, his light skin,
Hmm.
and his European features, whatever that means, and his blue eyes.
Hmm.
And he spoke about that as well. So he really, and it was the best 5 minutes in
Yeah.
television that I can think of for the last decade, and he hit it on all cylinders.
I mean, he hit it on all cylinders. He was powerful. He was bold, and he was sharp, man. The brother was clean. It's a good-looking brother to deliver a powerful message, and it just had everybody captivated, not focused on anything else but the message. Like when he said, it's not the burden of the brutalized. I'm sorry. The burden of the brutalized is not to comfort the bystander. That's not our job. I mean, he really put into context this entire
True.
past year of people, and 2 years really,
Yeah.
of people telling us that you shouldn't protest this way, you're disturbing this X, Y, and Z. Like that line by itself really just catapulted the message and amplified it like 1,000-fold to me. What did you think about that
Right,
particular
right.
line?
Yeah, I love that line. To me, he was saying, it's not our job to make you feel comfortable,
Yeah.
and we've got so much going on that your hurt feelings, or the fact that, you can't get your Frappuccino because, we are staging a sit-in in the middle of a mall. You need to get over that because we've got things to do. One of
Hmm.
the other lines was something about, oh my goodness, I'm
If you have no
blanking now.
interest,
Uh,
if you have no interest
right.
and no interest in equal rights for Black people, then don't make a suggestion to those who do. Sit down. That line.
Exactly.
Oh man.
Right. And so that was something of, and I think that was sort of a response to those, and that may have been a response to maybe the older
Hmm.
Black folks who
Yeah.
have been
Yeah.
critical of the Black Lives Matter movement, and the beautiful thing is that he didn't say, "Hey, I'm talking to you, Black men,
Right.
right now," or "Hey, I'm talking to you, older civil rights activists."
Oh yeah. Yeah.
But it was clear, who he was talking about, and the other line was, if you're going to critique, it's something like, if you're going to critique what we're doing, make sure that you have also critiqued the oppression
Oppression that we
under which
suffer.
we operate.
Yes, yes.
Oh my goodness.
It's so many points. Now, me as a speaker and me as an observer, political observer, like I saw his brain working. Like I can see the machinations in his mind where he was calculating and taking his time and thinking about every thought. The last thing that jumped out to me was
It was lyrical. It was
yeah,
for me. It was poetry.
it
If,
was.
because of course, I watched it more than once. The thing about the brands on our
Yes,
bodies.
I was just
Talking
going
about
there.
how.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, and I mean, it gave me chills. We're talking about the brands, meaning from slavery, how they used to brand us to
Hmm.
identify us. And now here, so many people are working toward, getting brands or endorsements put
Yeah.
on our bodies and getting that money. And,
Hmm.
and he kept saying brands on our bodies. And it really was poetry to me. It was lyrical explanation of everything that he was feeling. And it just could not have been any better.
No, it's not possible. I don't think anyone could have done it better. I don't think he could have possibly said it better. Because to me, as I listened to his speech, he did what he did. I love to see people do what you think you would have done in a situation, right? When instead of somebody not rising to the occasion, I would rather see someone rise to those heights and say everything that you could have imagined to say and then some. And he really hit the nail on the head, that perfect intersection between race struggles and racial justice and class justice. I mean, he even called out the rich Black. He said, we're all here getting money. We're all about that money. But as soon as we get it, it's gone. I mean, I don't
Right.
think anyone left there unscathed. It was perfect. April, I'll let you get the last word and tell everyone how to get up with you.
Yes, I am Reign of April everywhere, REIGN of April, Facebook, Instagram. My website is Reign of April, but most importantly, you'll find me on Twitter
On the
dispensing
Twitters.
craziness and wit sometimes
Hmm.
at 140 characters at a time.
Listen, I said it the other day, and I absolutely mean it. Most of the time, I'm on Twitter. I'm ready for a fight. I'm looking for a fight. I mean, I love it when somebody wants to, challenge me. But there's like three people in the world that I would never want to get into it with. One is Yvette Carnell. I've already said that live on the air a couple of times. And two is you. I won't disclose the third person, but you're in that group of people on Twitter I don't want it with ever. So let's stay friends, right?
Absolutely. No, you are my brother from another mother. I'm always happy to be on the show. And even when we disagree on particular matters, I appreciate,
Yeah.
where you're coming from, and you're just a smart dude. So I'm
Aren't
always
you
happy to be
aren't you
around.
glad the primaries are all but over?
I'm glad for you because I was concerned about your heart rate. So,
I'm,
I have really tuned it out. I am part of that girl, I guess, with her
yeah, yeah,
contingent who will be voting for Hillary because they're afraid of a Trump presidency. But,
yeah,
but I still haven't, I'm not necessarily advocating for her, but
yeah,
I think the alternative is literally scary. So
yeah.
yes, I'm glad to have you back in the fold.
Glad to be back. And thankfully, I'm in Massachusetts, so I don't have to vote for Hillary. I might even vote for Jill Stein. You never know. April Rain, thanks so much for joining me. Always a pleasure. Give my best to everyone that give my best to your peoples. All right.
Will do.
Take
Thank you
care.
very much.
857
Good night.
600 0518 if you want to join the conversation. I'll be joined momentarily by Matt Sienkiewicz, and we're going to dig into the conversation on the Middle East, particularly the letter from Bakari Sellers, the entire conversation about the questions of apartheid. Is it apartheid? We're just going to talk, man. I have him on the line. Matt, how's it going? How are you, Professor?
Hey, Ben, how you doing?
I'm doing good. Thanks so much for joining me. Glad to have you back on the air. So, I mean, I sent you the interview. I sent you, what we were talking about this week, the conversation that I had with Rania Khalek. She's coming from a very pro-Palestinian position. And, I agree with a lot of what she said. I think I agree more with the perspective of Cornel West on the issue, particularly some identification and support of the intent, of the general intent of the boycott movement. There's a lot to unpack with this. So I always want to get different perspectives, and I like your perspective because I think even though it's different, it's balanced. What did you think about the letter that Bakari Sellers sent to the Congress, to the DNC, particularly defending the 2012 language, protecting Israel, Jerusalem as the capital of Israel, and not referring to what's happening with the settlements, not referring to it as an occupation? What are some of your thoughts on that?
Yeah, well, my first thought was a disappointment, right? I think that this is not productive, particularly, and I also read it as being a fairly cynical act, a sort of a calculating move, which is not to say that I don't think that Bakari Sellers has honest affinity for the state of Israel, but the logic laid out in the letter does not quite add up to me. There's nothing in there that says from a sort of logical, moral, ethical, even necessarily sort of geopolitical level, why it would be bad to say occupation is occupation. Right? He doesn't say that. He says other things, right? He says that, He says that anti-Semitism is rising. Okay, I mean, this
Professor,
is true.
I hate to cut you off. But your microphone is hitting your shirt and it's hitting that button and it is just ringing. Yeah. If you want to just hold it hold it tight okay, go ahead.
Is that better?
Go for it.
Oh, sorry about that. We're good now?
Yeah, we're solid. Rock and roll.
Yeah. Okay. Excellent. All right. So, for example, in this letter, he articulates that anti-Semitism is a growing concern. If you look at attacks taking place in Europe, you see this is absolutely true. If you look at the Trump movement and kind of what you see in the online sphere, it's absolutely true. what does that have to do with calling occupation is another question, right?
Yeah.
And the connection there seems extremely tenuous.
Yeah.
Right. So he doesn't like BDS. He thinks BDS is a problem. He disagrees with it. Okay, that's one thing. That has nothing to do with not calling occupation, not calling settlements.
Yeah.
Right. There's no logic that actually explains why you don't do that. Right. So what is the logic not to call a settlement, not to call an occupation. And the logic is political on an American level, right, on a domestic level. When I read this letter, what I heard was Bakari Sellers saying, you know what, we are in a dogfight with this maniac, Donald Trump, and why would we do anything that might sacrifice a piece of the center? Right, and there's a lot of votes to be had by sort of keeping the status quo with Israel. There's a lot of money to be raised by keeping the status quo vis-a-vis Israel. Yeah. And so let's just not touch that, right? Let's stay away from that. So that's what I read it as, and in some ways this is more of the same, right? It's the idea that there is a political price to be paid for challenging the Israeli government. Yeah. There's no price to be paid for just ignoring the Palestinian side.
Let me jump in here real quick because you're still having a pretty bad problem with your microphone. I don't know if you want to just take your headphones off and just speak directly into your device to get rid of that noise. But I want to make sure the audience heard what I heard, because I heard you say a lot, and I'll give you a second to set that up. That the letter from Bakari is really a political letter, but not even a political letter that is so much so pro-Israel as much as playing the American political game with Israel and using it as a cynical means. And Bakari, he'll be on. Bakari is my friend, and I've told him as a friend he's dead wrong about this letter, right? But he'll be on to be able to represent his own position. But I agree with your assessment, and I always find it interesting, right? Because some people would have the expectation, you being Jewish American and more Orthodox than anything else, people would have the perception that you would fall on the side of AIPAC, right? And that's an unfair assumption, but I'm sure people make it. So you're able to look at this from a Jewish perspective, and even from your perspective, not that you represent all Jewish Americans, but from your perspective, you're not able to connect the dots of this letter. You can't find the logic behind this letter, and the only thing that you really can take away from it, as I stall and give you enough time, the only thing that you can really take away from it is a cynical political game, and not even one that's pro-Israel as much as it is pro-American relationship with AIPAC. What do you think about that? Am I hearing you correct?
Yeah, that's more or less what I'm saying. Can you hear me now?
Oh, it's so much better, man. I'm glad I stalled for you. Go ahead.
All right. I apologize for that. I've got a baby sleeping in the other room, which is why I was trying to keep it to the headphones. But this will be just fine. This is my perspective on it. Right, that the letter says a lot of things that I believe that Bakari Sellers almost certainly believes in and believes in for his reasons. I don't think the letter says anything which explains why we can't call occupation. Right. I think the explanation why we can't call occupation is that there are votes to be lost, there are donations to be lost, and the real logic of the letter is just don't touch this, right? We've got this crazy guy Trump we're trying to beat. Don't deal with this right now. Which is not to say I'm sure that Bakari Sellers holds these beliefs. I'm not going to say he doesn't, but the letter to me seems a little short on logic and long on political strategy.
Okay, so I love what you said, and actually I didn't hear that part. You're saying that it doesn't lay out the outline. Doesn't outline any logic for why not calling occupation, and without him actually hitting that logic, he's essentially saying, let's leave it alone. Let's not stir this hornet's nest, and let's make sure we get all the same votes that we would get in a year without calling the settlements occupation. Correct?
That's correct. I mean, the closest thing he comes to that, as far as I read it, is saying, for example, that BDS is something that he disagrees with, that he thinks is dangerous, which is an opinion that he's certainly people hold. But again, that only works as sort of a scare tactic or like a slippery slope argument, right? If we start saying occupation, then all of a sudden we'll have BDS and we'll have people boycotting Israeli universities, and that's simply not true, right? There are many people who are supporters supporters of Israel, and I am one of them. I think that Bernie Sanders is one of them, who is, are not comfortable with the BDS movement in its entirety, but certainly want to call a settlement, certainly want to call an occupation, and that line's just not drawn in this letter, which is why I lean towards reading this as him sort of saying, like, look, what is the political gain here? What is the benefit? And the question really is, can the progressive movement, punish, actually I hate to use that word, but can they push on this particular issue, right? Is it high enough up on the progressive agenda? I mean, there's a lot of stuff that the Sanders crew wants to put into this platform. How much, weight are they going to put on this particular issue? And then when it comes to, progressive voters, are people willing to stay home if, for example, Clinton moves in ways that they like in education, moves in ways that they like about taxation or whatever the case might be, if she doesn't move on Israel? And the gamble here is that the progressives will come out if you give them other things. Let's not move on Israel and then disrupt the center.
How do we make this? On our last conversation, you pointed the same thing out. And I think this is one of the biggest takeaways politically that we can consider, that there is absolutely no ramifications for holding and espousing very loudly an anti-Palestine perspective or even a pro-Israel perspective to the detriment of Palestine, right? There's no political ramifications. In fact, you actually score more points if you do that. How do we, as progressives, and people who, even if you're not progressive, you just want to see the Palestinian people treated as humans and you want to find a solution, how do we bring some type of ramifications, political ramifications, when we have issues like this where, I've said it, when we have situations like this, not particularly on Bakari, because I don't want nobody going after Bakari, but I know people will, so that's besides the point. But in general, how do we bring political ramifications for people who espouse anti-Palestinian perspectives?
Well, I mean,
and that's
to
not
a certain
really a
extent,
fair question.
This is a real.
Yeah, but go ahead.
No, well, we can talk about though why it's such a difficult question, right? I mean, one aspect is that as much as for a certain subset, and it's a reasonably large subset, but it's just a subset of people, Israel-Palestine's a really big deal.
Yeah.
But for most Americans, it's not that big a deal. It's a place far away to which they, maybe don't feel much in the way of connection. There are a lot of issues in the world that they don't spend their time sweating over, and they're not going to sweat over that one. Right. So how do you make an advance? I mean, one thing that can happen is the people who are really invested in this, right, can start ratcheting it up, putting it higher up their priority list. I mean, to me, the progressive Jewish community has to play a central role in this, right? And that is where you get into a struggle, right? So I mean, to my mind, the approach that you see in organizations like Americans for Peace Now and even J Street gives an opportunity for people who do find this really important and do want to call occupation, do want to advocate for a viable Palestinian state. Those organizations give voice to those people. I say support the one that you like best of those personally. If you come from the BDS perspective, you're not going to like those organizations. There is also, you have to decide, is this the issue that matters for you? And if it is, you shouldn't vote for the candidate who is not embracing these issues. And that's just the question: is, are you willing to sit there and I'm not saying to do that necessarily, but if that's where you stand, I really think that's the case, because there is just it is very difficult to mount a sort of pushback in a different way, so far as I understand it. To my perspective, it's simply that these issues do not rate highly enough when it comes to what progressives tend to be, pushing for, and so it gets forgotten. And all politics are negotiation, right? And this comes out of negotiation. What do you want to give up to get this? That's another question you might ask.
Yeah, that's something. It reminds me of. Well, never mind. I'm going to leave it there. I want to leave it there because it really puts it into perspective of the extent to which you need to be willing to go for the issue that's number one for you. And a lot of people aren't willing to go the distance as far as saying, I refuse to give you my vote if you are not standing for X. And I think there are a lot of issues that if we took that approach, just clean cut. That's our approach. This is going to be an interesting election if everyone actually has enough nerve to actually say, and not just nerve, but whatever it is that you believe in, to say, no, you are going to support the TPP, so I can't give you my vote. No, you don't stand for calling occupation, so you can't get my vote. No, you're not going to ban fracking, so you're not going to get my vote. I ended up saying it anyway. I was trying to avoid saying that, but I think that really puts it in perspective. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I mean, this is, yeah, the way you put it is right, and that is to me, a tremendous moral problem.
Yeah.
So, just to speak personally, right, I think that Clinton, with regards to the Middle East, I don't like what she says about it. I think that it's going to lead to continued misery in places beyond Israel and Palestine, but especially in Israel and Palestine. And yet, I cannot possibly conceive of not voting for it, and that's because I cannot see Donald Trump as president of this country, and that is the negotiation in my head. Right, and that is a problem.
But you're in Massachusetts, man. You're here with me, man. So let's you and me. Let's go vote for Jill Stein. Everybody else can go jump off the cliff and vote for Clinton. Not that Jill Stein's solutions are all right, but go ahead.
Well, you're right. I mean, look, that is a yeah. Okay, so you can play it strategically, whatever the case might be. But as a principle, we don't take politicians a la carte, right? We take politicians, as a basket of goods, right? You get it all. And we tend to only have two options. And you mentioned Jill Stein. That's nice, but as we know, if we're really talking about what we're going to get, what we're going to take home from the store, that's not really on the menu. You just this issue of compromise. Man. I mean, it is, and this is why the Sanders campaign was so important. Was because it at least introduced the possibility of changing one of those menu items. Yeah. Right, and as it relates to Israel and Palestine, right? I mean, this is one of the great successes of the Sanders campaign, in that you can see there being this little tiny crack, right? This little kind of possibility that in the long run, maybe the discourse can open up, and we can say we're going to call occupation.
Listen, man, that's
a huge victory.
I was going to say that is a big thing. If nothing else, Bernie Sanders has knocked open the Overton window where I can actually say without even hesitating that I'm a democratic socialist. And then I might slow down a little bit and say, okay, I'm a socialist. But we couldn't say that last year. And now seeing Cornel West on stage saying and speaking so affirmatively about the plight of Palestinians and speaking of solidarity with BDS, while many establishment Democrats are lobbying for legislation against BDS, just to have that on stage, whether or not you agree with it 100%, I think is such a positive thing for the discourse here in America. Professor, I want to get you the last word, and I want to invite you to that conversation that we're going to have with Rania Khalek and Bakari Sellers, and then I just got word that that Professor Mark Lamont Hill is interested in joining that conversation. So it'll be a nice, not a debate, but we'll have a good conversation about it. So I'll let you get the last word and then tell everyone how to get up with you.
Yeah, well, I mean, geez, I mean, I want to make clear here that I definitely, I don't doubt the sort of sincerity of Bakari Sellers, and I don't want to say that I'm inside his head, but I just find the cynicism, to me, it sticks out. To me, this seems like a political maneuver. It seems like a play for votes and money, and that is I mean, the world boils down to politics, but it's very sad if we can't deal with issues such as the long-term state of Israel and Palestine because we are worried about protecting political centers. It's a very difficult situation, and one that I'm not happy to see. If you want to follow me, I'm at Media Studied on Twitter. You can also look me up. I teach in the Communication and International Studies departments at Boston College, so you can look up Communication Department, Boston College, find my information, my email there. Always happy to be in touch with people.
Awesome, man. Professor, thanks so much for joining us again, and hopefully we'll have you back really soon.
Thanks, man.
Take care. 857-600-0518. I have been getting plenty of calls. A lot of people calling in want to join the conversation. The phone lines are open. I'll save all of my rants for later. I want to give you a chance to get in here. I saw some comments. My producers brought some comments to my attention about my usage of the word Indian war cry in terms of, and I could have totally left this alone, but you know me, I don't ever leave anything alone. If it's something that I did wrong, I'm going to run headlong into it. No problem. I refer to Native Americans as Indians, Indian Americans. I forgot exactly what terminology I said, but you know, the preferred term, the correct term is Native American. And even though many people do refer to them as Indian American, the first people, but the point was made. And should I apologize? Yes, I'm not a dick. I apologize for using the term that is not most appropriate, regardless of what other people say. All right, so there you go. Even me, I will call myself out. I can, you know, we got thick skin around here. We're not sensitive like that. We can keep it 100. Keeping it 100. Caller, you're live on the air. What is your name, comment, and/or question? Scotty, what's up, man? What's on your mind?
Not much, man. I just wanted to comment on the seller's letter. Also, the guy, I think he mentioned that this is also part of neoliberal multiculturalism, where.
Hey, go for it. I don't hear you anymore. All right, I think we lost you. Scotty, are you there? All right, Scotty, we lost you. 857-600-0518. We'll give Scotty a chance to come back to the conversation once he fixes his audio. He was going to ask something about neoliberal multiculturalism. So thank you, David. I appreciate you, the producer, always having my back. Okay, so we'll give the phone lines are open, 857-600-0518. Let me talk about since he said neoliberal multiculturalism, something else I wanted to say about Oscar So White and diversity really is, you know what, it is so important, and I wanted April to unpack this a little bit more, but it is very, very important for people to see themselves. And I guess I didn't realize it. I didn't realize how important it was for people to be able to see themselves for their development, right? And I know just having black faces in white spaces is not the solution, and it's not going to fix anything. It's not going to fix everything. It's not, you know, getting a diverse board of CEOs or of employees or, you know, I can't even think of the word, board of directors. Getting a diverse board of directors is not going to fix the problem that most people face, which is an economic problem. However, being able to look up and say, I see somebody that looks like me, that really does help and shape particularly young people's minds. When my son said I had never seen a black doctor before, even though he was delivered by a black doctor in Fort Lauderdale, right? Of course, he wouldn't remember that. It doesn't matter. I can tell him the story that he was delivered by a black doctor, by a black woman doctor who was phenomenal, one of the most amazing women I've ever met in my life. I could tell him the stories about it, but until he sees it himself, until my daughter sees it, they will always think that, you know, we can't do those things, like, because we've never seen it. And so representation is right. And this is what I was talking about on Tom Hartman's show, is that we don't have to seek class-based solutions to the detriment of racially specific solutions. It's not an either or proposition. It's a both and. We can simultaneously address class as well as race. And as progressives, we're going to have to simultaneously address class and race. And if you're not equipped or ready to do both, then you are going to be burden down the movement. You know, white people, you're going to have to be the masters, white progressives particularly, you're going to have to be the masters of the intersectionality. You're going to have to, because if you're not, then these neoliberals who have mastered the art form, they are going to spin the narrative that you can't handle race and that you're racist and that you are not able to see the plight of minorities. And because of that narrative, we will always be fighting from behind on class issues. So we have to do both and, man. It's so important. And I know a lot of times people just casually dismiss identity. I only dismiss identity when I see it being manipulated. But identity plays a huge part in people's lives, man. You know, if you look at the massacre in Orlando, they were killed because they were gay, LGBTQ, right? They were killed because of their identity. You look at Charleston, they were killed, Mother Emanuel, they were killed because of their identity. You look at the overwhelming number of people stopped by stop and frisk, right? They are overwhelmingly minority. They are being stopped because of their identity. And so even though if we fix representation, even though if we have black officers, that doesn't fix all of the problem. No, it doesn't. But you can't erase the fact that race still plays a factor. So philosophically and pragmatically, philosophically, it is a problem. Pragmatically, if you can't talk effectively about that problem, then these neoliberals who have mastered multiculturalism are going to continuously beat the hell out of the progressive movement. Somebody out there should be able to say amen. Caller, you're live on the air. What is your name, comment, and or question?
Oh, hey, it's me, Nick. Can you hear me?
Yep. What's going on, man?
Can you hear me?
Yep, I can hear you good. Can you hear me?
First thing I want to say, yeah, I can hear you. The first thing I want to say is, you know, I still feel like the problem with seeking diversity in areas of power or in spaces is that there's actually a culture that goes along. So it's not just like, you know, you bring in your separate experience. We often see that when people move beyond, move outside of where they were before and they move into a different culture, they assimilate. Mm-hmm. So just having a different colored face, be in the hiring board or a part of the ownership, is not going to change the organization. You actually have to necessarily change the organization. And when you do that, you will get other people to be in there, mm-hmm. because the nature of the organization has now been changed, and they will matriculate other people up there. Mm-hmm. But just getting people up there without actually changing the culture of the organization doesn't really achieve what you really wanted to achieve. And, mm-hmm. and what I will say is the inequitable situation will not be changed by just adding a more diverse set of the oppressors. The oppression will not change. Mm-hmm. And so when you make that a primary target of your reform instead of an ancillary benefit that can be gained with a greater reform, then you end up with a situation where you'll be fighting for years just to get the diversity, and then even if you do get it, your situation remains unchanged.
Okay. I don't disagree with you. But I also think that it's, again, like I said, it's both and, right? So I agree. Certain people do change when they get into particular situations, and they're there for themselves, and they're not going to be there to address the issues on race or even the issues on class, let alone class, right? But, you know, while my homegirl April is taking up the diversity charge, I'm over here taking up the class charge. We do both and. There's no need for us to put one above the other, because we're never going to get everyone rallied and behind one, right? And I hear that a lot. I hear that a lot from the black left. It's like, you know, if we, you know, we're losing focus, right? We can't come together in unity and fight for one thing. No, we can't. We won't ever. So while they're bringing up the flank on race, we could bring up the left flank on class and hit them from both sides and get something changed out here.
And see, what I would argue is that it's likely that as long as you're divided and the goal is unclear, you probably won't win on either front.
Well, we're always going to be divided.
Or if you do win on the diversity front, wait. I'll stand corrected. What I meant to say was, if you did win on the diversity front, you have to have the understanding that that wasn't really the main battle. That was side. Mm-hmm. That if you want to improve the actual tangible situation, yep, you have to win the greater fight.
Yep, and that's why I like Jesse's speech.
That's all I want to say.
I like this speech because he actually addressed on a soft target, right? In a soft way, not a very direct way, but he addressed class just enough to keep the ball. He didn't say anything detrimental to a class-based argument. But, you know, as diversity is being addressed by all the other people dealing with diversity, people like you, people like me and people like the Progressive Army, we will bring up the left flank and make sure that nobody forgets about class. All right, folks, my kids are here with me.
Let me make one.
Man, I'm about to say goodnight. Go ahead and give the last word, Nick.
Okay, I was going to say, let me make one last one.
Uh-huh.
The last thing I want to say is always remember that, like, when you're dealing with class consciousness, we as a people, and I'm talking about black people in particular, a lot of us have really lost the class consciousness. We root our politics in a cultural identity instead of a political economy. And I think, you know, moving forward, we have to start reevaluating that.
Not just reevaluating, but reminding people that all of our rich legacy, every bit of every radical movement in the past, all of them converged eventually, not initially, but they all converged eventually around class and the need for redistribution of wealth to fix a broken system that continues white supremacy. They realized in the 60s that we may have fixed civil rights or we may have made the civil rights situation better, but now we have this huge problem, right? So I agree with you. As they work on diversity, we'll always be there to remind them. We just need to bring the black left and the black flank, the left flank. We just need to bring it out bolder, stronger, and talk about redistribution of wealth. Use the same language that Dr. King used. Use the same language that James Baldwin, well, not James Baldwin, but that Ralph Abernathy used. Use the same language that A. Philip Randolph, that's what I was trying to say, A. Philip Randolph used, particularly as it pertains to a class-based argument and economic Bill of Rights. You know, we have a rich history as African Americans in terms of socialism. And you know what? It's finally a year where we can say that and start reminding us. And you know what? All we need as black people do that, and people like you, Nick, and people like me, as we do that, we need our white comrades to be able to affirmatively say that there is a race problem in America, a problem of white supremacy, a problem of that we need to address. We need to address white privilege. And if we don't get rid of white privilege, we need to establish and create some black privilege. And we need to do that. Maybe we need to do that by reparations, a race-specific economic solution. We need white people to start, not just white people, not white neoliberals, because they've mastered that language and won't ever do a damn thing about it. We need white progressives who have their eye on the ball of a class-based remedy to be able to espouse racially specific solutions and language so that we don't get swift-boated again, so that we don't get neoliberals out there talking about race and being the Pied Piper, bringing in the black democratic establishment. You know, we need white folks to be able to do this. But I got Nick, I got to get you going. My wife is out there with the kids. We'll pick this up next time. Okay. Folks, you have a good night.
The Benjamin Dixon Show is only possible with listener support. Go to www.thebenjamindixonshow.com to register for our blog, join the Progressive Army, and support The Benjamin Dixon Show. It's Ben Dixon! If you like this episode, be sure to share, like, and subscribe.
Y'all want to see my kids? Let's see if they're asleep.
Consider becoming a Patreon. Go to www.patreon.com/The BPD Show and support The Benjamin Dixon Show.
Hold tight, YouTube. Where's my camera? Camera one. You don't want to be on, Benjamin? Say, it's the Benjamin Dixon Show.
It's the Benjamin Dixon Show.
Say, hey, everybody.
Hey, everybody.
What do you like? Tell them what you like. You like Hello Kitty?
Hello Kitty.
How old are you?
No.
You know, girl, you know how old you are. How old are you? Are you 2?
2.
You are not 2. How old are you? 1?
1.
How old are you, Lizzie?
3.
Okay. All right, give me a kiss. Mwah. Tell Benjamin, come here. Benjamin. All right, no Mario. All right, he doesn't want to do it. I'm not going to make him. You guys have a good night. Are you coming, Ben?